When is the right moment to become a leader? So that is a topic we can talk forever about, probably, because there are many opinions out there. But I can say that the very basics, being a credible person, being a role model, helping others, motivating them, and being able to infuse motivation or intrinsic motivation is something everyone can learn without having the role of a leader, without having the accountability or even liability as a person in a role, right? That helps you to even find your inner peace, make decisions, correct decisions, be on point, show up, be consistent and persistent. That is what you actually can do. Everyone can do that, and everyone should do that, right? That is why I think everyone should have a coach or a mentor or both to be reminded of these things. Let's get to the point of a role. So in software engineering, we have the manager role, right? The person who is responsible for others. So when should you take this kind of role? I would recommend to not do that too early in your life, because the reason for that is you should have practiced that in a, let's say, in a smaller area, a smaller group of people beforehand, and got the feeling of actually how is it to lead other people, to do something for or with other people. Because as a leadership person, people are actually looking up to you, which means that you feel a responsibility, which can be pretty daunting and not very pleasant for you. And this is the reason why I would say be aware of taking that role too early in your life, because make sure that you actually know your craft. So the management role in software engineering in most teams, or even team lead or something like that, is not really working when you don't understand your craft. And the reason for that is people will challenge you. It's not always like this utopian idea of people supporting you as a team lead. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they try to challenge you. They try to be the other person, right, who is opposing you or something like that. This is something happens very often, especially when you look like a weak person in that moment. So I just do a little bit of real talk today, because the first thing is you can always start to become a leader, but really taking the leadership role means you take responsibility, and that means you should be able to do so, right? Of course, in an emergency situation, you can always do that, but in a regular situation, you should think about that very well, because you could harm yourself. You could develop anxieties you don't want to have, because there might be some senior persons who have developed personalities who are pretty strong in their mindset and these kind of things, and they are opposing you. So then what are you going to do? That's a little bit tricky situation. In that moment, when you feel like something like that, you definitely need to have a mentor or a coach who is helping you. You shouldn't do that alone. Because when you face these kind of problems, you don't have the actual experience to really face these kind of people. And I had that very often in my mentorings, especially with CTOs and engineering managers who face these kind of peoples in teams. And their entire strategies and everything what they wanted to do was actually impossible because of some people, and they didn't know how to actually fix that situation. So if you want to become a tech lead, it might make sense to really do it step by step. So I don't like the idea of doing your craft, and suddenly, I could be a team lead. This is not how it should be done. So if you want to become a leadership person, and you feel it in yourself, right? Then you should see it as something you need to work towards too, right? As I said, start with the 4 pillars of leadership, which is, in my opinion, your own credibility, being a role model, being able to motivate others, and being able to challenge others in a good way. So that was my actual concern about that. You actually cannot challenge other people. And that is what you need to build up before you can join that kind of environment as a responsible person. Otherwise, you just get burned out. And I see so many people get burned out because modern social media tells you everyone can be a leader. No, everyone can have leader traits, but not necessarily a leadership role. So if you start to be in a role, you are accountable in that moment. And this accountability can create pressure and basically burn you out in no time if you can't live up to that. So instead of going for the typical hey, I'm a software engineer for 5 years now. How can I become an engineering manager? In a real company with real people, so not a typical 3-person startup, right? That is actually a hard thing to do. So you shouldn't do that with just 5 or 3 years of practice. That is something for a typical senior after at minimum 8 years of work. At minimum, in my opinion, minimum, right? You should have mastered your craft already to do that. Start with team leadership. Start with taking the lead in a little project. Start with getting the lead in some form or feature project, something like that. Small things, right? Have a 2-person team and try to lead this team. You and another person. That is where you should start, and not take a look for the grand role where you get a lot of money and you basically burn out and no one takes you anymore as a leadership person because you burned out and you lost 2 jobs in a row and your CV looks like, yeah, a Swiss cheese. You don't want to have that. So make sure you can stand up to your role. So I saw that simply too often. Now let's be very honest about that. I'm a little bit sick of seeing people failing, not because of the people, but because of other people told them to, or some strange interview process where putting people into the wrong role, right? That is not cool. So people will get burnt out and the consequences are severe and very long term. So I would not recommend to really aim for that. So do it step by step, do the very basics first, strengthen your personal traits, your personal character, have a baseline which you can follow for some years and then go to lead others and expect from them the same baseline, the same things, the same credibility. If you have that for yourself, proven to yourself, then you can start to actually say to others, that is what I expect from you. As a last thing, as a last bonus thing for today, I had my trainer back then when I was an apprentice. So I wasn't starting in software engineering. I started in an actual craft in the media sector. And he told me that I can only expect something from others what I can do myself and I would do myself. So the reason is, especially in teams with equal professions like software development, in the software development team, you normally are a software engineer yourself when you lead other software engineers. And that is extremely important because it is often very much about 2 things, right? You have, on one hand, you have the technical parts, and on the other hand, you have the human part. So you need to have both in order to lead well, right? We are still humans. You need to have credibility in your team. So people need to believe that what you say is founded and grounded on something and not thin air, right? And that is oftentimes the problem which we have with Scrum Masters of project managers who are actually not software engineers. They just tell you what to do, but they never done it themselves. So they can't really see that if that is actually working in time, if that is actually possible or not. So that is not what you should do. I wish you a great day and yeah, think about that. So thank you very much for listening. If you want to learn something more about leadership or even looking for a mentor or coach, take a look at snackablecto.coach. That is where you find help, right? I wish you a great day. Have a nice one. Goodbye, everyone.